TerraCotta. Today we're going to be painting this cardinal, and I'm going to be walking us through step by step how I painted the male cardinal. If you would like to paint along or you would like access to this picture, you can look in the description below, and the female cardinal is there also. So both the male and the female are from Pixabay, and they're open for anyone to have access to or to paint from. Okay, so let's talk about the colors. Before we can even start our painting process, we have to choose our colors, we have to know the mood that we want to create, and we have to know how they swatch out. So I spent quite a bit of time swatching out these colors, just finding out how they blended well to see if they were harmonious in color. Now you might be saying, oh yeah, Cheryl, you're using a lot of color in this painting. Yeah, normally I don't use so many. Normally I'm using a very limited palette, but this time I do have some convenience colors. And the one really big convenience color that I have is that fresh tint. That fresh tint is the orange that's throughout this entire painting, and it's creating the color harmony in this painting, along with the Prussian blue. So the fresh tint is in the background, the fresh tint is in both of the cardinals, in the trees, and it's inside the bird feeder. And the Prussian blue is in all of those places as well, except inside the bird feeder. It is, however, on the outside. So these two colors are creating color harmony. Now the fresh tint is the one that's going to brighten the red. It's not the white. And I have an expression about this, and it is, if you want to make red bright, you don't use white. Because if you're putting white on top of red, you're going to be making pink. And I don't want to have a pink cardinal. So I need to brighten it with either a yellow or an orange. And in this case, I'm going to be using that very gorgeous fresh tint. Okay, so let's begin with the painting. By the time I was painting the male cardinal, my palette was really messy. So right here, you're seeing how I set up the palette for painting the female cardinal. When I first set it up, you can see that I had little squeeze outs of all of the colors I could possibly need for painting the cardinals. And so then I would go in and I would start making 3 or 4 little paint pools of color mixes, blending those colors out that I would probably need on the cardinal, and then I would take from those paint pools onto the canvas and blend them wet in wet. And this is the same process I did when I was painting the male cardinal. So this was my first layer, and once I got it, I was able to start putting in my second layer. And just FYI, my first little cardinal, the female, she is 1 3/4 inches, really small, so I had to do a lot of really fine detail work. The male cardinal is about 4 inches, but instead of using a larger brush, I continued using the little brush. And that was working out okay, it just took a lot longer. If I had used a larger brush at that first layer, I could have color mapped in a lot faster. But I did like the detail I was getting, and then I kind of knew where I was going to go for the second layer because all of my detail was pretty clear on that first round. Layer was just for the color mapping, always very carefully putting my strokes in the direction of the feathers. The second layer, I did relocate a few of the feathers, adjusted the light a little bit, added some different and finer strokes. Basically, it was just a time of adding a lot of the feather details because the colors were already there pretty solidly. feathers were painted, I looked at my picture just to get an idea of the colors that I would be needing to paint the beak and the masking around it. Now to paint that beak, I did need to paint dark to light because there was a light highlight on the top, and traditionally in oils and acrylic we do start with the dark colors and then we build up to the lighter ones. And so this is the rule that I was following. However, when I was painting that masking around the beak, I started light to dark. And the reason is when we're using any kind of contrast, deep contrast color like black or pure white, we don't want to only put pure black or pure white down. So I started with kind of a watered down Prussian watery mix. I put that down, I added a little bit more Prussian blue just to adjust it, and then I started streaking in some feathers in pure black, and the purest black was right around the beak. So here's another color tip. Whenever we're painting watercolor, acrylic, oil, it's at the very end that we use those deep contrasts, the blackest blacks and the whitest whites. So it was at that very end when I added the purest blacks. The blacks are matte, they're flat, they don't reflect light, so we don't want to have a lot. It's only for just a few little areas. And the blackest black on this bird is the feathers right around the beak, the ring around the eye, and the pupil of the eye. And then for the whitest whites, they were only on the top of those mounds of snow. And the mounds of snow was white with a little bit of dirty colors from my dirty palette, just to dull down the color. So I only popped the white at the very end on the peaks of those mounds of snow. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this full overview of how I painted this cardinal and that you got some color tips. If you are interested in this as a full painting tutorial, I will be soon uploading it to my Patreon. You can check it out there. And if you have painted a cardinal in the past or are currently painting one, I would really love to know what were your colors of choice.